An autopsy confirmed the police detective's opinion that the victim was already dead when immolated, having been struck with a blunt object from behind with enough force to stave in the skull. Observing no particular abundance of blood near the site, the police detective gave his opinion that the fatal blow was struck elsewhere, the body having been transported at some point during the night to this low-lying and densely wooded part of the school grounds, and there set alight. The clothes and personal effects of the victim were presumably consumed by the fire. A bottle of paraffin was found beside the body. To add to the macabre circumstances surrounding this grisly find, the headmistress of the school, Miss Sybil Joines, was discovered deceased of natural causes in the early morning hours of the night in question. A representative of the school, Jane Grandison, stenographer, denied any knowledge of the regional school inspector's whereabouts after about 4 p.m., when he left the headmistress's office to conduct a final inspection of the grounds. Her offer to attempt to contact the deceased, employing the method of spirit communication taught at the school, was declined by the authorities, who called it a tasteless publicity stunt. The student who discovered the body was not available for interview, but we have learned that her mother has withdrawn her from enrollment at the school, citing extreme emotional distress. The police are interested in questioning a drifter seen loitering around the grounds earlier in the week. I read, then reread the clipping from which little polygonal shards kept drifting down to settle in the nap of the stained and smelly carpet. I had never heard of the Sybil Joines Vocational School. That alone would have pricked my curiosity, since I had flattered myself that I knew quite everything there was to know about the spiritualist movement in late 19th to early 20th century America. But my discovery also resonated with another of my research interests, the proliferation and popularization of what one might call speech studies, stuttering cures, elocution, orthoepy, Major Beniowski's anti-absurd or phenotypic orthography, Pittman and Gregg shorthand, and other methods of supplanting the arbitrary signs of written language with a sort of score based on the sounds of speech. I am only human. The murder intrigued me too. Had the mystery been solved? Suppose I could solve it, with the methods of scholarship, of course. I closed the book on its interesting passenger and pressed it to my chest. I had the sudden feeling that someone was looking over my shoulder. Not another ghost, but an up-and-coming scholar in my own discipline, slavering to take from me the lead that was, but for how long, mine, all mine. But I think I felt something more than greed even then, the sensation that a hole had suddenly gaped in a world that had hitherto seemed decently, if not prudishly, buttoned up. Most of us avert our eyes when this happens, but I looked, and saw a flutter of aquamarine and viridian, a pounce of stripes, a spatter of molten ice, frozen fire, the smell of music. I express myself clumsily, and yet I believe some of you, at least, will know what I mean when I say that my first thought was, yes, and my second, I remember this. How indeed could I have forgotten that time I burrowed under the covers to read by flashlight past my bedtime in that warm and golden tent cave, delicious illicitry, and then, thinking I was crawling back up toward the head of the bed, actually made my way deeper, through a tunnel that went on and on, from whose roof fine roots stretched down to fascinate my forehead, until I came up in the center of a snow-thick forest, where some mechanical angels were rehearsing a hymn of clicks and chirps, before an audience of spiders. I had longed for such another opening my whole life. I suddenly noticed a pair of eyes shining back at me from a gap in the opposite bookcase and started, dropping the book. Doubtless it was again the cat. The proprietor jerked aside the towel curtain and stood looking at me without enthusiasm. "None of these books are at all valuable," he said. "Please feel free to toss them around." "Don't worry," I said. "I'll be buying this one." He worked out the tax with bad grace and a pocket calculator, but took my money, though he watched the book vanish into my satchel with evident regret. My subsequent researches did nothing to dispel my amazement. Even today, I find myself marveling that an institution that in its heyday raised a public scandal on more than one occasion, and whose theoreticians pursued a vigorous debate with notable intellectuals of the time, should have been effectively forgotten for so many decades. The decline of the spiritualist